Okay, don't be surprised. So this is like a new setup to try to, it's the other way around. We have a new setup, so I will first.
I think I saw Ellie, right?
In the background, yeah, it's
Yeah.
easier. Yeah, it's Patrick. Okay. So I will start with introduction, but let's wait like 5 minutes to 3 minutes just for everyone to join.
Sounds good.
Where are you right now? Not in Lisbon?
No, back in Germany. Next week I'll be in Colombia, but
Yeah.
I was in Germany for November now.
Any plan to come back to Lisbon?
Yeah, like no concrete plans right now, but I hope there will be some time next year where I can join you guys again.
Yeah, a big discussion with Thiago
Mhm.
to do a bootcamp in Porto next year. Another one, but this time, you know, with like universities. He has been in contact with some universities, probably in February or something like this. So yeah, if you
Sweet.
want to join,
A Porto comeback, that would be awesome.
the Porto comeback.
The Porto Mafia. Yeah, definitely let me know. I will see if I can join. Also been talking to Massimo and Luca, and would be a great. We agree to have another boot camp together.
Yeah, actually, they were presenting at the previous camp, like with their WebSocket project. Was really cool, really technical, but really cool what they're doing as well.
Yeah.
What
Yeah, also like
have you been working with them, or like just it's like talk?
just talking, like we haven't in that sense worked together. I was on my way back from Lisbon. I actually flew via Zurich. So I met up with Luca for a little while, and was good to catch up. I also like their newest proposal. So some interesting stuff, you know, to do some integration with external services potentially and pay with ICP. So that would be
Yeah, I
nice as
haven't
well.
had too much time to read about it, but yeah, essentially, like they made this proposal. I don't know if it's voted or not, when it will be voted, but the idea is to, yeah, like let people pay for services with ICP, like external
Yeah.
services, like that's some applications still use.
Mm.
Okay. Okay, yeah, we can start. So welcome everyone this morning. We have Patrick. So Patrick is an OG Motoko Bootcamp as well. And yeah, thanks for being here. So you've been working on the IC for, it's been a long time now, right? It's like almost 1 year and even a bit more. So my first question, as always, is can you introduce yourself and tell us like how did you start it with the IC? What did you started to build, and like, you know, how was the early days?
Yeah. Happy to be here, and hi everyone. So I'm Patrick. I'm a software engineer, and I actually got introduced to the IC just through its mainnet launch, and then I started looking into the tech and really got amazed by it. It was kind of like refinding my interest in crypto and blockchain technology in Web3, because now when I saw what the IC could do and what the vision was there, I really felt like we could build all these decentralized applications that we were kind of dreaming about. And so I relatively early then in, I guess, 21, after the mainnet launch, I started working on some side projects. One of them is still involved, and also the project I will introduce to you later. And then at some point, I also wanted to transition to full-time, and that's what I did late last year. And since this year, I've been basically working full-time on projects on the internet computer. And yeah, like as Seb mentioned, I also participated in the bootcamp, the first one online last year, and then earlier this year in Porto when we had the chance to have it in person, and both of the experiences were great. So I can really congratulate you that you found your way. I think it's a great resource, the Motoko Bootcamp, for you to have this kickstart into the ecosystem, into working on the IC and understanding its concepts and programming on it. And Seb also puts in a lot of effort to make it a great resource. So it was really helpful to me, and I'm sure it will also be for you.
Thanks. Thanks. Do you want to maybe start with the first project you built? I think it's interesting, even if it's not like we have a specific project to talk about today, but if you also want to talk about, what you tried, and maybe that didn't end up being like a concrete project, but things that you wanted to try. Because it's important to like step back and show our students that sometimes you try projects and it doesn't lead to anything. So if you want to share the things you started to build early on the IC.
Sounds good. Yeah. So through my studies in computer science before, I got really interested in ubiquitous computing. So that's really the idea that you have computational resources everywhere. It's also kind of linked to augmented reality, I would say. And so I was interested to see how can we build augmented reality applications that kind of aggregate all the different use cases that could be. So in everyday life, you wouldn't want to, if you have your smart glasses on, you wouldn't want to walk around and change applications all the time, but it would really be important to have some kind of platform where all these use cases and applications could hook into, and then would kind of be aggregated. And I've been thinking about how could that be accomplished. As a centralized approach, I wasn't sure if people would really want to kind of submit their application data to it. And when I saw the IC, it kind of clicked that we can now kind of build one of these, like an open database approach, and have this open network where people can contribute their data to, and then still stay in control and see that they can benefit from the data. And together, though, all the data makes up in this network, and we can kind of leverage across these different data silos. And so that's what I wanted to build, a relatively big project. I first started actually implementing it in Rust. I hadn't worked much with Rust before when I got started working on it on the IC, and it turned out to be a bit too much of a learning curve. And actually in that phase also I saw the announcement for the first Motoko Bootcamp, and then I decided that will be a good resource to kind of get me started programming with Motoko. And that's what I did. And also afterwards, after the Motoko Bootcamp, I continued the work, but now with implementing this open network in Motoko. Got a small grant at some point for it. And then also to this day, I'm continuing the work, but it's a bit more in the background, I would say, simply because it's a relatively big project. It's relatively complex, and I first wanted to make sure that there are applications on top of it that can leverage it, and then potentially to make that a resource as well for other applications to use it. And so to this day, it's the idea would really be to have this kind of open graph database that's running as a decentralized service on the IC.
Do you have some screenshots or something you want to share? I've actually allowed you to share your screen. It was not before, sorry. Now it should be good.
Yeah, I can.
If you want to share a few images. Actually, I remember the first time you mentioned the project when we met at the bootcamp. Like, I remember when you introduced the project to me, and my first, like, I think the first thing I said was like, wow, this is ambitious project. Like, you mentioned us connecting those canisters together, having like a room, and then being able to move to other canisters, and like it was really, really ambitious. But I think it's great that you focus on the application side. Like, I think the IC is amazing, but one problem that we have is like we all have those big visions, and how do we move there step by step, because like it's long-term game, you know, but in the short term we need some applications that we can use. So yeah, cool.
I agree. Yeah, so this is one image that can maybe support my explanations a little bit. So that's the protocol. That's this open decentralized graph database. And the idea is really it sits on top of the internet computer as a protocol that can connect all types of different data items and kind of bridges them and connects them. And then if you want to find out what are connected items, you can look into it. So for example, that could be a person or a user account, and then you could connect your NFT collection to it. You could connect your personal website to it. You could connect some more information about you, like a profile. And then if people look up the entry for you, they would then be able to see all this information that you connected to yourself. But the first application we built is this, we called it Open Internet Metaverse. I'm in one of the spaces here. The idea is really, as the name suggests a little bit, that we have kind of a metaverse already, which is the internet. And we don't necessarily need to build new virtual worlds, but we can try to make the web 3D. And then everybody, like a website, can have a 3D website, which is kind of like their virtual personal space. And the same way we connect websites these days with hyperlinks, we can then connect these 3D websites between each other. And for example, if Sepp has his own virtual space and I have mine, and I say I want mine to be connected, and these connections would then be shown like these portals, and then people could see, all right, that's kind of like the virtual neighborhood that I wanted to create and I wanted to show. And these kind of connections to other spaces, they are really these connections that we have here. So that would be one of the virtual spaces, and we are leveraging this protocol within this applications to really connect the different spaces and build up like a virtual neighborhood.
Super cool. So is this your personal space, this one? Or is it just
that's one of the spaces I created for myself, yeah. So
okay.
I used it for a few demos before. That's why also I uploaded these images to it. It's not necessarily meant as a presentation tool, but you can use it as such if you like. And this is, for example, our team, Alex and I, who built it. I think I lost you, Seb. All right, thanks. I'm reading. We can still hear you. All right. Yeah, I can continue talking a bit about the project. Oh, okay, nice. So yeah, like we built this as a tool at the end of the day. So the idea is really, this is the landing page. The idea is that you can really create kind of whatever you want to. We give a few, let's say, ready to go spaces here, where with one click you could just create like kind of one of these spaces here, or if you prefer like this island space, or this is the one we saw right now. So I started off with this kind of template, but you can also really upload your own files if you want to. So those could be images, videos, 3D models. So let's say you have.
What is GLB? Actually, I'm not familiar with this format.
That's a file format for 3D objects.
Okay.
And so it's a binary one, so it's pretty efficient and also pretty standardized. So many applications use it. As far as I know, for example, these days, if your phone supports it or if you download an app, you could 3D scan objects or often also like complete scenes, export them to a GLB file, and then, for example, you could come here, upload the file, and then create like your personal space with it. You would then be able to easily share it with others and kind of display all the different items that you want to show and start building like your own personal space.
Okay.
And these kind of spaces you would then, I'm not logged in right now, but you would see the list of spaces you have. You can have several, and that's one of the ones I created. And the space itself, it has its unique URL. The idea, as I said, is that it's a form of 3D website that you can leverage to show whatever you would like. I will log in here in the background. So one service I can also recommend, that's what I'm using here as well, is NFID. I think they make it really easy to log in, and especially if you're not necessarily familiar with the IC and the wallets, you can just use Google, for example, what I used right now as well. And it still has account abstraction, so in that sense, Google wouldn't really know what kind of apps you're using. And as far as I know, it uses internet identity behind the stage, so a really cool project.
Yeah, actually, so we had some issues here at the bootcamp with internet identity. So, you know, if you have like an older computer, sometimes it's hard to create a passkey. And so, yeah, I'm planning to integrate with NFID. It's super cool. You can just log in with an email, and that's great. That like that reduces the barrier to entry to the IC.
Yeah, I agree.
Can you go into one other space? Is it already working?
Yes, I can log in here on the landing page as well. And we can even create a space.
Yeah, would love to see that. And maybe go a bit into details into the architecture, how it's been built, what you've been struggling with, you know, how it's been going for you.
So on this account, I've got these two spaces. That's the one we just saw. You can quickly take a look at this one. This one is very different. So while this is really a 3D space with depth, this one is really just a 360-degree image I'm hosting here. So that's also something that's possible. When we go to the create page, so this, for example, is a 360-degree video. We can set it as such. And we have this kind of preview. And if we like, we can then create the space. And I hope I haven't uploaded this particular file already. Oh, it should be good. And we would then be able to see our space here. And yes, we have this kind of this new space hosted here with the 360 degrees.
But this one we cannot move inside, right? You can't.
Exactly. That's really just a video, and we could, let's see, could also create one of these internet island spaces that comes ready to go. So you notice the loading these spaces isn't instantaneously. That's because it's actually quite some data. This 3D engine that we're using here is a framework called A-Frame. It sits on top of 3JS. 3JS is probably, with Babylon.js, the most popular framework to build 3D scenes, at least on the web. And with A-Frame, they added like this extra abstraction to it where you can basically write relatively simple HTML and then have some JavaScript hooks that you can use there. And it makes it really easy to create these kind of 3D scenes. So I can show you an example for here, how this space that we just created basically looks. Oops.
So everything, the backend, the front end is on the IC.
Everything is on the IC, yeah. So this is really, in that sense, if you want to call it a metaverse, it's really completely on-chain. So everything that happens here, that you see here, is hosted on the IC. The front end is implemented as a Svelte app. We can, if that's
Svelte application, okay, yeah.
a Svelte application that's of interest, I can also talk a little bit about that. And as I said, it uses this A-Frame framework to really give the 3D power to the application, such that it's rendered in 3D. It comes with a lot of features involved. For example, these movements, these animations. It's relatively little work to get it all done with the framework, so that's pretty cool. And yeah, the backend is Motoko. And as I mentioned earlier, we leverage this graph database for the connectivity between spaces. So that's also written in Motoko.
Okay. Do you have one canister per space, or is the spaces just stored in one central canister?
It's stored in one canister currently.
Okay.
So that's one of the architecture questions we had earlier on. We decided to keep it in one for now. Each space is hosted there in like an NFT friendly format. So it's in that sense an NFT, with the idea that at some point potentially you could start building out cool spaces and then even sell them if there's interest. But it's all in one canister right now. One of the, as you mentioned, one of the future steps could be that each space becomes one canister, or each user has their own canister, and the user spaces would then live in that canister. Currently, it's one canister.
Okay, yeah. Yeah,
So
that
yeah,
makes sense.
this would be an example of the kind of how one space would look like, and this is really this island space. So you see, with, I would say, relatively little code here, and it's pure HTML, you get like a relatively nice looking space already. So we leverage quite some powerful technology, A-Frame, Svelte, Motoko, the IC, to make it all happen. Yes.
Okay.
And you asked about technical challenges earlier on. I think one of the questions we had was really this architecture question. Should we make it similar to like, I think, the open chat approach, where each user gets their own canister, or should we even make it such that each of the spaces would be their own canister? I guess we chose the simpler approach for now, to have it all in one canister, and but that for scaling purposes, and also to really have more custody over their own spaces, would be great if users at the end of the day will have their own canisters, or if even each space will be their own canister. So I think that will be a little bit more involved to implement, but should also be possible. Otherwise, I would say on the Motoko side of things, for this project, so in the backend, it's relatively straightforward. There are The code is all here, by the way, if you
Is
want
it
to
open
look.
source? Is it open source, this repo?
Yes, it's all open source. Yeah.
Okay, nice. Cool.
I can also put the link into the chat if you like.
Yep.
So this is the one for the open internet metaverse, and this is the one for the protocol, so the open decentralized graph database. That one is much more involved, I would say. That's where we hit more technical challenges, at least on the backend side. I would say this one was more difficult on the front end side to, if you want to preview, for example, these other spaces, and to, even though we leverage like some powerful framework, it's still not that straightforward to make it all work. A lot of work, for example, went into this editing mode where you can edit your space in real time. You can add like new items here. You can change the positioning of these items, and then if you hit save my changes, then they actually get written to the internet computer right away, and are persisted
to the backend.
Exactly.
Okay. Okay, yeah, that's pretty involved, yeah.
So
you
that's
can move any object that is part of the scene, and it will be saved like in the states, and anyone can see the modification. Okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. So, and here as well, like we didn't build this all from scratch. We leveraged a certain editing mode that came with A-Frame, and then really customized it all, and then obviously integrated it with the backend canister, such that usually these changes aren't persisted in an A-Frame scene, but we build it such that it's now being persisted in real time, and you really, everybody who then visits the space a second later will see the new updates, which was a cool feature, but also one that's, I guess, more involved, and providing a lot of options here for you to customize your space and add items to it, in case you want to add another space shuttle to it or something. You could do that. On the kind of this infrastructure project with the graph database, that I would say is much more involved, because it's kind of a protocol at the end of the day that wants to cater to many different applications. So we really have to make a lot of design decisions. How can we make the data flexible enough, but at the same time also specific enough that it's really helpful for the applications, and flexible enough such that many applications can use it. And then also we're currently in the process of making it much more scalable. One other cool project I can recommend there is a NoSQL type database that lives completely on the IC called CanDB. And I think that's also, like, if you're starting off at some point, a cool project you can take a look at and potentially also leverage in the projects you're using. And we are currently building the next version on CanDB.
Are you leveraging? The next version will be on CanDB.
Yes, then the current, the first versions we built were kind of a one canister approach to kind of, as a proof of concept, I would say. And now we are finalizing the integration with the newest version, which is leveraging CanDB. So it will be automatically scalable, and but that is still challenging to do on the IC, right? Because then many canisters are involved, and if you think about having some kind of database to check the access rights and permissions across the different canisters, you might want to have, because it's a graph database that we want to build, you want to have calls between the different data items to kind of make these connections, and that's if it's one canister, it's pretty straightforward. But then if it scales out and you don't really know, not every canister knows about each other canister involved in the system, then it becomes more involved. But it's a very interesting challenge and cool to implement.
Yes. Yeah, right now for the bootcamp, we are just working with one canister. So we haven't dived yet into the challenges of multiple canisters and how you connect them. Okay, I have more questions. So why building this on the IC? Why not Web2? You would have, you would have less scalability issues. You could integrate with what Meta is doing. Why? Why not?
So for this web protocol, as I said earlier, so that's really the project I got started with, this open graph database. And for me, it makes more sense that such a system that aggregates a lot of applications where valuable data is involved for the developers and users would be implemented kind of with this new paradigm of being an open network, and users and developers would then keep the ownership and the control of the data, and it doesn't become like data surrendering to a centralized database or a service, but it really becomes data contributions to the open network. And then together through all these data contributions, you would then have a network that people can leverage, always respecting the user settings. So because you have ownership and control over your data, you can specify how it can be used, how it can even be found, visibility. And in that sense, it really becomes like a new kind of infrastructure. And I found that on the one hand very interesting, also a cool challenge to build, but also I think this new paradigm that Web3 enables here, and specifically the IC, I'm not familiar that it's really possible on other chains, I think is very powerful. Also looking into the future, where I think data will become more and more important, and also people will have a different perspective on that and want to benefit from their personal data in terms of ownership, but also in terms of monetizing it.
Yeah.
And the same for really the spaces here. So I think the same way people like to have their personal webpage, they, in this metaverse era, they would also like to have their personal space and not being kind of behind a gated virtual world, but just leverage this open approach where you can create whatever you want to, and the kind of the scarce resource is not like artificial by introducing scarce land, that what many virtual worlds do, right? They sell a certain number of plots, which I don't think is a good decision, and in terms also for the project, but especially because it creates this artificial intelligence that we don't really need, because the web is in that sense infinite. And in this approach, everybody can just create the web spaces the way they want to. And then the idea would be, if you create something cool and people are interested in it, they would link to your web space the same way people link to interesting web pages currently. And that kind of attention that you create through your creation, you could then monetize. And here as well, I think it fits really well with this Web3 approach, because you own your spaces, you can decide what you do with them. And then one of these aspects is also monetizing them. So if there's a lot of attention coming to your space, you can really benefit off that.
That makes a lot of sense. So that brings me to, actually, that was my next question. What is your business model? How do you plan to monetize what you're doing? Maybe in the first time, how do you plan to, you and your team, to, become sustainable? And then in the second time, how do you see the spaces that users create being monetized?
Yeah, so as a first, from a user perspective, I would say that similar to a web page right now. If you have visitors, you can decide if they maybe should pay kind of an entrance fee to your web space, or you could, the same way I've uploaded our images here, you could have some advertisement in there. You could even you could just upload it to your space, or even more elaborate, you could have this advertisement linked through this protocol, and then you have kind of statistics on, okay, this is how often your web space was visited, and that's how often through your web space this advertisement got loaded, and then you could monetize that again. You could have some kind of subscription model as well. Like, I think having this there as well, that there's a benefit to having kind of native transactions integrated through building on top of the IC, because if you have you could, for example, count the seconds that I'm looking at this advertisement or that I spend in this space, and then you could really just pay with for that with like a microtransaction. I'm not sure that's what people will do at the end. What I think is more realistic is that they, for example, say, all right, I've got this cool space. I created really an experience that people like. I've got many visitors. I will offer first off 3 neighbor spots that are kind of premium placements. And whenever somebody comes to my space, they will see these neighbors. And if you want to be one of these neighbors, then it's completely automated. You just kind of link through the protocol to it. I specified how much it will cost you to create this link. I don't have to be really involved. Maybe I want to be involved. That would be a user setting, because maybe you don't want these neighbors to be specific sites. I don't know, whatever could be advertised there, or you just don't agree with the experience that's created there. So you could have more control, but it could also be fully automated. And then you would have these neighbor placements, and through that you would then again capture attention. So you could have kind of this creation market where you monetize links being created to you, and that users can then see, or you could also monetize this retrieval aspect, where it's kind of like views and clicks in the current space. And then as well, like, there could be custom implementations of spaces. They are tokenized as NFTs currently, and that they could simply be sold. So there could be a marketplace of these different kind of spaces. So it's really the connectivity plus items within the spaces plus the spaces itself that you could trade. So we've got one user, for example, that's actually this space, who started to build out an NFT gallery, and he wants to kind of show his NFTs there and potentially also sell them. So to the other part of the question, like, how would we monetize this? So currently it's free. I think there can be premium features where that can be monetized. I think as it's tightly integrated with this protocol, whatever fee for retrieving or creating connections is collected here on the protocol level, like that could be a small part of every transaction. That could be another revenue stream. And then what we are exploring as well is maybe a relatively straightforward way to monetize this is to have kind of 3D online shops, right? So I could have, maybe this is not the perfect setting for an online shop, but maybe it is, because you're selling space-related merchandise or space-related products. So you would have this kind of space, and then with a few clicks, you've got your 3D space, you've got your products uploaded, whether as images or even as 3D objects if you have them. You can place them there, and you have a a URL that you can easily share, like to any other web page, and visitors then can basically go shopping on your virtual 3D online shop, and they can buy the products there. Maybe it's an NFT that's directly sent to their wallet then, or it's really a physical product, like, I don't know, you're selling space themed socks here, and then that transaction could also be handled with ICP, and we could take a small cut as a fee, and maybe there's a subscription service for premium features again. So these are some of the ideas we're having to monetize this.
Great. That's a lot of that's a lot of different areas for monetization. So if I recap, you can monetize maybe by having like a subscription fee, or like maybe you're paying per minute spent in the space. You could have advertisement in the space. You could use it as a shopping, so essentially making money on whatever you're selling in the space. Maybe having paid space, and also like connecting with the space, and maybe making other people that want to connect to your space, be your neighbor, pay a specific fee as well. That's super interesting. Yeah. Okay. Do you plan to put this into the control of the DAO at some point? Are you seeing that like in the near future, or maybe long term? How do you see that?
Yeah, I think that would be cool, because I mean, it kind of comes with the name, which doesn't have to be the final name. Open Internet Metaverse was it's a pretty functional title, I would say, maybe not the most catchy. But yeah, so I think it would be interesting to have the project overall, which is really this tool to build these individual metaverse spaces as these 3D websites, to have this tool under the control of a DAO, and then not only will the spaces then be in that sense decentralized, but also the underlying tool and infrastructure. So that's definitely something that's that would fit well. In the short term, I guess we haven't made plans to put it under a DAO yet, but that will definitely be one of the options, depending also on the ongoing development and which direction it will go.
Okay, makes sense. So I have one last question on my side. Are you connecting to other builders on the ICP ecosystem that are building kind of similar or adjacent projects? Is there like a group or some kind of discussion going on? Because I think there are some other people doing not exactly how you're doing it. I think each approach has like trade-off, but I've seen other like 3D spaces and probably some kind of technology like that could be shared. Is there a group or something?
I'm not personally aware of one.
Okay.
But I also have to admit that's something I have to do more digging, some catch up to do, to really more outreach to projects who work on similar applications that could well be integrated, because these neighbors, they don't necessarily have to be like other spaces created here, but they could be also from other projects. That's actually that's the reason we are really using this infrastructure here, the protocol, to be able to integrate with all kind of different projects. So yeah, that's probably the most important next step, to see what kind of other projects are in the IC ecosystem, potentially even beyond, but to stay focused for now rather on the IC, that we could integrate with and really build out, instead of just these Web3 spaces, really a completely open approach, a completely open metaverse in that sense.
Okay, cool. Do we have questions here? So yeah,
Hi, good morning. Thank you so much
Morning.
for your time, Patrick. Um, I'd like to know what's your take on maybe a hybrid time. This is what I have in my head. We have to bring audiences to blockchain. How are people going to find your services? Should we have like somewhere be linked to Web 2 so we can bring people from Web 2 to Web 3? Or how do we make it work? If you want to have advertising, for example, you need to have a large audience to make people. I guess there's no advertising servers built
On
yet
ICP?
on ICP. Like
No.
you're not working there on that service, but that's something really interesting to be working on.
Yes.
So you would have to take your advertising from services like Google Ads Server, for example. If you could integrate that and this hybrid moment till everything moves finally to Web3, how do you see it? What's your take?
Yeah, definitely a difficult question. Like, I don't think I have the magic recipe here. I think it's on the technical side, it would definitely be possible to integrate like Google Ads, for example, into the space and then have it displayed as one of the widgets here. In terms of drawing audience from Web 2 or in general towards the spaces, I think some of the features that we wanted to build in to allow this to happen at least as easily as possible is that you really have an easy way to share these spaces. So you can just put this, send this via a text message, put it into your social media profile. Everybody can come here right away. They don't need to install anything. They don't need to create an account. They can instantly see your space. So really like a web page as well. And then if they want to dig deeper, they can log in. And we try to make that process as easy as possible as well with NFID. Originally, we had just wallet options, but added NFID relatively quickly so that the friction is as little as possible. My personal take in general, I would say, is while if you're in the IC ecosystem and talk to people within it, I think it's cool to show that what you're building on the IC. But if you're targeting maybe Web 2 audience, they probably shouldn't even have to know what kind of underlying infrastructure you're using. If they care, I guess they can dig deeper and then find out. But if we manage to abstract it such that it works kind of as if it's hosted on Web 2 infrastructure, but it's actually on Web 3 infrastructure, then I think we make a big step towards really enabling more mainstream users to migrate. And for them, it won't even feel like a migration. It will just be another service that they are using. But in case they become more involved and start over time understanding the different possibilities that this offers. So for example, ownership control, you can easily sell something. The transactions are kind of integrated right into the product. You can monetize your own spaces. And even though it seems like you're using a service or like you're using a service, at the end of the day, the end product that you're creating is really yours. And so it's not just like you're building on the platform and you're standing and you're playing within others' rules, but this makes it much more flexible for you to do whatever you feel right with your ownership at the end of the day, because you create these spaces, you create the data within, so it should be yours. I'm not sure that should be the direct marketing approach, and because maybe currently the understanding is not like completely there yet, how important data could be and then how important ownership could be. So I think first focusing on the user experience and the new things that you can build, for the let's say more mainstream audience. And then within the IC community, I think it's worth talking more about these additional Web3 benefits that we have right away. And once people become more familiar with the service or product, then they will also find out about that and hopefully also like that. So yeah, maybe not a perfect answer to what the strategy could be, but I think usability, easy way to share it, to have this potential viral factor that Web2 products often aim for, that those could be some of the aspects.
Cool.
Hello, Patrick.
Hi.
I would like to know how much approximately costs to run one of these spaces. I know it depends of how many users and how the quality of the picture or the video that you put, but if you could talk about the numbers, it would be nice. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't have exact numbers, also because honestly, currently it doesn't matter at all. It's super cheap. So we're talking about fractions of cents for hosting these kind of spaces. You're right. So basically the components that we would have here are what kind of data is involved to render the space. For a default space like this, we just store it once and then it's loaded from there. So that's not too bad either. These models are not like super small, but also not gigantic. And then the images, we currently have a limit to 2 megabyte. That could also be increased, but even hosting like a bunch of these images won't cost you a lot. In terms of usage, as long as there aren't any update calls involved, it currently doesn't cost anything because query calls to the IC are for free. So query calls would, for example, simply be loading the app and the space, loading the media within, and all kind of basic interactions would be query calls. So they are currently for free. Update calls would, for example, be when you edit the space and you store it, but these are also currently like very cheap, so I can't give you like an exact number there, but I'm not sure that you would even with probably, I don't know, 10,000 update calls, you would have a fraction of a cent still. So the main cost would be the storing the media, but also that I would say the IC is a very efficient solution to do that. For storing such a space over a year, I'm guessing we are spending maybe 10 cents, if not even less. So it's really currently the costs aren't really high.
Sounds
It's
very cheap.
1 gigabyte, $5, the like reference. So I guess it depends on how much your space is heavy. But yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah, there is a question in the chat. Can we visit that address? So
yeah, sure, I can put it in the chat. Mm-hmm. So it's currently, let's call it a single player mode. So there are no interactions involved. That would be much more involved, I would say, to implement. We also, one reason for that was the implementation effort. The other one was we didn't really feel that's where we can differentiate ourselves. The idea here was really to be more of this toolkit to build 3D websites. And then if there's more interest in interactions at some point, we could then add that on top. And that could, for example, be done via the WebSockets that Massimo and Luca are building. So there is a project that works on WebSockets on the IC that really can enable real-time interactions, also especially for gaming on the IC.
Great. Do you have any more questions? Okay. I don't know if you want to add something, Patrick.
No, if you want to try it out, I'm happy if you give it a try, and if you have any feedback, also very happy. If that's something that's interesting to you in terms of also the implementation, I know you are developers, then please get in contact, check out the two repositories. Maybe it's helpful to you.
Maybe you can share some of your socials. I don't know if you're using too much Twitter or
yeah,
like
I
anything that we can reach out to, like see your project and see you.
So on Twitter, I should be this, and that should be a good way to reach me as well. Otherwise, yeah, you can also share my, I guess, email or Telegram later, Seb.
Yep. So I
If
have
people want to
Telegram
reach out.
Okay. Yeah, actually, I'm super glad that we had this presentation, because I knew that you were working on this. Like, I mean, we've been talking, we even had lunch together, and you were talking, but it's the first time that I really see it, and I didn't know it was so like already so advanced. So I'm super cool what you're building. I think you should be more vocal in the ecosystem. Like, a lot of people probably don't know that you're building this. So have you thought about starting like a Twitter account and maybe sharing some posts about, or maybe you're waiting, for like better, better tech? But yeah, my advice would be like, start sharing what you're doing, because I think it's cool, and I was not even aware, even though I know you very well. So like, yeah.
Yeah, thank you, and you're definitely right. So that's always a little bit the danger as a developer. You focus on the tech, you focus on building, and that's maybe also some advice to share to everyone. Also make sure to communicate what you're building, because you're building cool stuff, and it's worth sharing. So yeah, here as well, like we need to be more communicative about it. But thanks for the encouragement as well, and I'm glad you like this MVP.
Cool. Well, thank you very much. So our next session is at 2 p.m. So in 3 hours, for a mentorship session. Good luck everyone with your projects, and see you. See you, Patrick.
Good luck. Thank you. Bye-bye.